Romania is a country located at the crossroads of Central, Eastern, and Southeast Europe. It borders Ukraine to the north and east, Hungary to the west, Serbia to the southwest, Bulgaria to the south, Moldova to the east, and the Black Sea to the southeast. It has a mainly continental climate, and an area of 238,397 square kilometers with a population of 19 million people. Romania is the 12th largest country in Europe and the 6th most populous member state of the European Union. Its capital and largest city is Bucharest, followed by Cluj-Napoca, Iași, Timișoara, Constanta, Craiova, Brașov, and Galati. Europe's second longest river, the Danube, empties into the Danube Delta in the southwest of the country. The Carpathian Mountains cross Romania from the north to the southwest and include Moldovan Peak, at an altitude of 2,544 m. Settlement in the modern-day territory of Romania began in the Lower Paleolithic, followed by written records attesting the Kingdom of Dacia, its conquest, and subsequent Romanization by the Roman Empire during late antiquity. The modern Romanian state was formed in 1859 through a personal union of the Danubian principalities of Moldavia and Wallachia. The new state, officially named Romania since 1866, gained independence from the Ottoman Empire in 1877. During World War I, after declaring its neutrality in 1914, Romania fought together with the Allied powers from 1916. In the aftermath of the war, Bukovina, Bessarabia, Transylvania, and parts of Banat, Crișana, and Maramureș became part of the Kingdom of Romania. In August 1940, as a consequence of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and Second Vienna Award, Romania was compelled to cede Bessarabia and northern Bukovina to the Soviet Union and northern Transylvania to Hungary. In November 1940, Romania signed the Tripartite Pact and, consequently, in June 1941 entered World War II on the Axis side, fighting against the Soviet Union until August 1944, when it joined the Allies and recovered northern Transylvania. Following the war and occupation by the Red Army, Romania became a socialist republic and a member of the Warsaw Pact. After the 1989 revolution, Romania began a transition towards democracy and a market economy. Romania is a developing country with a high-income economy, that is emerging to be a middle power in international affairs. Romania ranked 47th in the Global Innovation Index in 2023. Its economy ranks among the fastest growing in the European Union, being the world's 41st largest by nominal GDP, and the 35th largest by PPP, being based predominantly on services. Romanian citizens enjoy one of the fastest and cheapest internet speeds in the world. It is a producer and net exporter of cars and electric energy through companies like Automobile Dacia and OMV Petrom. The majority of Romania's population are ethnic Romanians and religiously identify themselves as Eastern Orthodox Christians, speaking Romanian, a Romance language. Romania is a member of the United Nations, the European Union, the Schengen Area, NATO, the Council of Europe, BSEC, and WTO. History. Human remains found in Pestera Cuoase, radiocarbon date from circa 40,000 years ago, and represent the oldest known Homo sapiens in Europe. Neolithic agriculture spread after the arrival of a mixed group of people from Thessaly in the 6th millennium BC. Excavations near a salt spring at Lunca yielded the earliest evidence for salt exploitation in Europe. Here salt production began between the 5th and 4th millennium BC. The first permanent settlements developed into proto-cities, which were larger than 320 hectares. The Cucuteni, Tripolia culture. The best-known archaeological culture of Old Europe flourished in Muntenia, southeastern Transylvania, and northeastern Moldavia between c. 5500 to 2750 BC. During its middle phase, populations belonging to the Cucuteni, Tripolia culture built the largest settlements in Neolithic Europe, some of which contained as many as 3,000 structures and were possibly inhabited by 20,000 to 46,000 people. The first fortified settlements appeared around 1800 BC, showing the militant character of Bronze Age societies. Greek colonies established on the Black Sea coast in the 7th century BC became important centers of commerce with the local tribes. Among the native peoples, Herodotus listed the Geti of the lower Danube region, the Agathyrsi of Transylvania and the Sigini of the plains along the river Tisa at the beginning of the 5th century BC. Centuries later, Strabo associated the Geti with the Dacians who dominated the lands along the southern Carpathian Mountains in the 1st century BC. Burebista was the first Dacian ruler to unite the local tribes. He also conquered the Greek colonies in Dobruja and the neighboring peoples as far as the Middle Danube and the Balkan Mountains between around 55 and 44 BC. After Burebista was murdered in 44 BC, his kingdom collapsed. The Romans reached Dacia during Burebista's reign and conquered Dobruja in 46 AD. Dacia was again united under Despalus around 85 AD. He resisted the Romans for decades, but the Roman army defeated his troops in 106 AD. Emperor Trajan transformed Banat, Oltenia, and the greater part of Transylvania into a new province called Roman Dacia, but Dacian and Sarmatian tribes continued to dominate the lands along the Roman frontiers. The Romans pursued an organized colonization policy, and the provincials enjoyed a long period of peace and prosperity in the 2nd century. Scholars accepting the Daco-Roman continuity theory, one of the main theories about the origin of the Romanians, say that the cohabitation of the native Dacians and the Roman colonists in Roman Dacia was the first phase of the Romanians' ethnogenesis. The Carpathians, Goths, and other neighboring tribes made regular raids against Dacia from the 210s. The Romans could not resist, and Emperor Aurelian ordered the evacuation of the province Dacia Trajana in the 270s. Scholars supporting the continuity theory are convinced that most Latin-speaking commoners stayed behind when the army and civil administration were withdrawn. The Romans did not abandon their fortresses along the northern banks of the lower Danube for decades, and Dobruja remained an integral part of the Roman Empire until the early 7th century. Middle Ages. The Goths were expanding towards the lower Danube from the 230s, forcing the native peoples to flee to the Roman Empire or to accept their suzerainty. The Goths' rule ended abruptly when the Huns invaded their territory in 376, causing new waves of migrations. The Huns forced the remnants of the local population into submission, but their empire collapsed in 454. The Gepids took possession of the former Dacia province. Place names that are of Slavic origin abound in Romania, indicating that a significant Slavic-speaking population lived in the territory. The first Slavic groups settled in Moldavia and Wallachia in the 6th century, in Transylvania around 600. The nomadic Avars defeated the Gepids and established a powerful empire around 570. The Bulgars, who also came from the European Pontic steppe, occupied the lower Danube region in 680. After the Avar Khaganate collapsed in the 790s, the First Bulgarian Empire became the dominant power of the region, occupying lands as far as the river Tisa. The First Bulgarian Empire had a mixed population consisting of the Bulgar conquerors, Slavs, and Vlachs or Romanians, but the Slavicization of the Bulgar elite had already begun in the 9th century. Following the conquest of southern Transylvania around 830, people from the Bulgar Empire mined salt at the local salt mines. The Council of Preslav declared Old Church Slavonic the language of liturgy in the country in 893. The Vlachs also adopted Old Church Slavonic as their liturgical language. The Magyars or Hungarians took control of the steppes north of the lower Danube in the 830s, but the Bulgarians and the Pechenegs jointly forced them to abandon this region for the lowlands along the middle Danube around 894. Centuries later, the Gesta Hungarorum wrote of the invading Magyars' wars against three dukes Glad, Menumarat, and the Vlachgelo for Banat, Krasina and Transylvania. The Gesta also listed many peoples Slavs, Bulgarians, Vlachs, Hazars, and Siklis inhabiting the same regions. The reliability of the Gesta is debated. Some scholars regard it as a basically accurate account, others describe it as a literary work filled with invented details. The Pechenegs seized the lowlands abandoned by the Hungarians to the east of the Carpathians. Byzantine missionaries proselytized in the lands east of the Tisa from the 940s and Byzantine troops occupied Dobruja in the 970s. The first king of Hungary, Stephen I, who supported Western European missionaries, defeated the local chieftains and established Roman Catholic bishoprics in Transylvania and Banat in the early 11th century. Significant Pecheneg groups fled to the Byzantine Empire in the 1040s, the Oghuz Turks followed them, and the nomadic Cumans became the dominant power of the steppes in the 1060s. Cooperation between the Cumans and the Vlachs against the Byzantine Empire is well documented from the end of the 11th century. Scholars who reject the Daco-Roman continuity theory say that the first Vlach groups left their Balkan homeland for the mountain pastures of the eastern and southern Carpathians in the 11th century, establishing the Romanians' presence in the lands to the north of the lower Danube. Exposed to nomadic incursions, Transylvania developed into an important border province of the Kingdom of Hungary. The Siklis, a community of free warriors, settled in central Transylvania around 1100 and moved to the easternmost regions around 1200. Colonists from the Holy Roman Empire, the Transylvanian Saxons' ancestors, came to the province in the 1150s. A high-ranking royal official, styled voivode, ruled the Transylvanian counties from the 1170s, but the Sikli and Saxon seats were not subject to the voivode's authority. Royal charters wrote of the Vlachs' land in southern Transylvania in the early 13th century, indicating the existence of autonomous Romanian communities. Papal correspondence mentions the activities of Orthodox prelates among the Romanians in Muntenia in the 1230s. Also in the 13th century, the Republic of Genoa started establishing colonies on the Black Sea, including Calafat and Constanta. The Mongols destroyed large territories during their invasion of Eastern and Central Europe in 1241 and 1242. The Mongols' Golden Horde emerged as the dominant power of Eastern Europe, but Bela IV of Hungary's land grant to the Knights Hospitallers in Oltenia and Muntenia shows that the local Vlach rulers were subject to the king's authority in 1247. Basarab I of Wallachia united the Romanian polities between the southern Carpathians and the lower Danube in the 1310s. He defeated the Hungarian royal army in the Battle of Posada and secured the independence of Wallachia in 1330. The Second Romanian Principality, Moldavia, achieved full autonomy during the reign of Bogdan I around 1360. A local dynasty ruled the despotate of Dobruja in the second half of the 14th century, but the Ottoman Empire took possession of the territory after 1388. Princes Mircea I and Vlad III of Wallachia, and Stephen III of Moldavia defended their country's independence against the Ottomans. Most Wallachian and Moldavian princes paid a regular tribute to the Ottoman sultans from 1417 and 1456, respectively. A military commander of Romanian origin, John Hunyadi, organized the defense of the Kingdom of Hungary until his death in 1456. Increasing taxes outraged the Transylvanian peasants, and they rose up in an open rebellion in 1437, but the Hungarian nobles and the heads of the Saxon and Sikh communities jointly suppressed their revolt. The formal alliance of the Hungarian, Saxon, and Sikh leaders, known as the Union of the Three Nations, became an important element of the self-government of Transylvania. The Orthodox Romanian Nazi were excluded from the Union. Early modern times and national awakening. The Kingdom of Hungary collapsed, and the Ottomans occupied parts of Banat and Krasina in 1541. Transylvania and Moravia, along with the rest of Banat and Krasina, developed into a new state under Ottoman suzerainty, the Principality of Transylvania. Reformation spread and four denominations, Calvinism, Lutheranism, Unitarianism, and Roman Catholicism, were officially acknowledged in 1568. The Romanians' Orthodox faith remained only tolerated, although they made up more than one-third of the population, according to 17th-century estimations. The princes of Transylvania, Wallachia, and Moldavia joined the Holy League against the Ottoman Empire in 1594. The Wallachian prince, Michael the Brave, united the three principalities under his rule in May 1600. The neighboring powers forced him to abdicate in September, but he became a symbol of the unification of the Romanian lands in the 19th century. Although the rulers of the three principalities continued to pay tribute to the Ottomans, the most talented princes Gabriel Bethlen of Transylvania, Mehdi I Basarab of Wallachia, and Vasile Lupu of Moldavia strengthened their autonomy. The united armies of the Holy League expelled the Ottoman troops from Central Europe between 1684 and 1699, and the Principality of Transylvania was integrated into the Habsburg monarchy. The Habsburgs supported the Catholic clergy and persuaded the Orthodox Romanian prelates to accept the union with the Roman Catholic Church in 1699. The church union strengthened the Romanian intellectuals' devotion to their Roman heritage. The Orthodox Church was restored in Transylvania only after Orthodox monks stirred up revolts in 1744 and 1759. The organization of the Transylvanian military frontier caused further disturbances, especially among the Sikhs in 1764. Princes Dimitri Cantemir of Moldavia and Constantine Brâncoveanu of Wallachia concluded alliances with the Habsburg monarchy and Russia against the Ottomans, but they were dethroned in 1711 and 1714, respectively. The sultans lost confidence in the native princes and appointed Orthodox merchants from the Fener district of Istanbul to rule Moldova and Wallachia. The Fanariid princes pursued oppressive fiscal policies and dissolved the army. The neighboring powers took advantage of the situation. The Habsburg monarchy annexed the northwestern part of Moldavia, or Bukovina, in 1775, and the Russian Empire seized the eastern half of Moldavia, or Bessarabia, in 1812. A census revealed that the Romanians were more numerous than any other ethnic group in Transylvania in 1733, but legislation continued to use contemptuous adjectives such as tolerated and admitted when referring to them. The Uniat bishop, Inocentiu Micu Klein, who demanded recognition of the Romanians as the fourth privileged nation, was forced into exile. Uniat and Orthodox clerics and laymen jointly signed a plea for the Transylvanian Romanians' emancipation in 1791, but the monarch and the local authorities refused to grant their requests. The Treaty of Kukuk-Kainarksa authorized the Russian ambassador in Istanbul to defend the autonomy of Moldavia and Wallachia in 1774. Taking advantage of the Greek War of Independence, a Wallachian lesser nobleman, Tudor Vladimirescu, stirred up a revolt against the Ottomans in January 1821, but he was murdered in June by Fanariid Greeks. After a new Russo-Turkish war, the Treaty of Adrianople strengthened the autonomy of the Danubian principalities in 1829, although it also acknowledged the Sultan's right to confirm the election of the princes. Mihail Kogalnishanu, Nicolae Balcescu and other leaders of the 1848 revolutions in Moldavia and Wallachia demanded the emancipation of the peasants and the union of the two principalities, but Russian and Ottoman troops crushed their revolt. The Wallachian revolutionists were the first to adopt the blue, yellow, and red tricolor as the national flag. In Transylvania, most Romanians supported the imperial government against the Hungarian revolutionaries after the Diet passed a law concerning the union of Transylvania and Hungary. Bishop Andrei Saguna proposed the unification of the Romanians of the Habsburg monarchy in a separate duchy, but the central government refused to change the internal borders. Independence and monarchy. The Treaty of Paris put the Danubian principalities under the collective guardianship of the Great Powers in 1856. After special assemblies convoked in Moldavia and Wallachia urged the unification of the two principalities, the Great Powers did not prevent the election of Alexandru Ioan Cuza as their collective dominator or ruling prince in January 1859. The United Principalities officially adopted the name Romania on February 21, 1862. Cuza's government carried out a series of reforms, including the secularization of the property of monasteries and agrarian reform, but a coalition of conservative and radical politicians forced him to abdicate in February 1866. Cuza's successor, a German prince, Karl of Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen, was elected in May. The parliament adopted the first constitution of Romania in the same year. The Great Powers acknowledged Romania's full independence at the Congress of Berlin and Carol I was crowned king in 1881. The Congress also granted the Danube Delta and Dobruja to Romania. Although Romanian scholars strove for the unification of all Romanians into a Greater Romania, the government did not openly support their irredentist projects. The Transylvanian Romanians and Saxons wanted to maintain the separate status of Transylvania in the Habsburg monarchy, but the Austro-Hungarian Compromise brought about the union of the province with Hungary in 1867. Ethnic Romanian politicians sharply opposed the Hungarian government's attempts to transform Hungary into a national state, especially the laws prescribing the obligatory teaching of Hungarian. Leaders of the Romanian National Party proposed the federalization of Austria-Hungary, and the Romanian intellectuals established a cultural association to promote the use of Romanian. World Wars and Greater Romania. Fearing Russian expansionism, Romania secretly joined the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy in 1883, but public opinion remained hostile to Austria-Hungary. Romania seized southern Dobruja from Bulgaria in the Second Balkan War in 1913. German and Austrian-Hungarian diplomacy supported Bulgaria during the war, bringing about a rapprochement between Romania and the Triple Entente of France, Russia, and the United Kingdom. The country remained neutral when World War I broke out in 1914, but Prime Minister Ion I Brătianu started negotiations with the Entente powers. After they promised Austrian-Hungarian territories with a majority of ethnic Romanian population to Romania in the Treaty of Bucharest, Romania entered the war against the Central Powers in 1916. The German and Austrian-Hungarian troops defeated the Romanian army and occupied three-quarters of the country by early 1917. After the October Revolution turned Russia from an ally into an enemy, Romania was forced to sign a harsh peace treaty with the Central Powers in May 1918, but the collapse of Russia also enabled the union of Bessarabia with Romania. King Ferdinand again mobilized the Romanian army on behalf of the Entente powers a day before Germany capitulated on November 11, 1918. Austria-Hungary quickly disintegrated after the war. The General Congress of Bukovina proclaimed the union of the province with Romania on November 28, 1918, and the Grand National Assembly proclaimed the union of Transylvania, Banat, Crăzăna, and Maramureș with the kingdom on December 1. Peace treaties with Austria, Bulgaria, and Hungary delineated the new borders in 1919 and 1920, but the Soviet Union did not acknowledge the loss of Bessarabia. Romania achieved its greatest territorial extent, expanding from the pre-war 137,000 to 295,000 square kilometers. A new electoral system granted voting rights to all adult male citizens, and a series of radical agrarian reforms transformed the country into a nation of small landowners between 1918 and 1921. Gender equality as a principle was enacted, but women could not vote or be candidates. Calypso Botez established the National Council of Romanian Women to promote feminist ideas. Romania was a multi-ethnic country, with ethnic minorities making up about 30% of the population, but the new constitution declared it a unitary national state in 1923. Although minorities could establish their own schools, Romanian language, history, and geography could only be taught in Romanian. Agriculture remained the principal sector of economy, but several branches of industry, especially the production of coal, oil, metals, synthetic rubber, explosives, and cosmetics, developed during the interwar period. With oil production of 5.8 million tons in 1930, Romania ranked 6th in the world. Two parties, the National Liberal Party and the National Peasants' Party, dominated political life, but the Great Depression in Romania brought about significant changes in the 1930s. The democratic parties were squeezed between conflicts with the fascist and anti-Semitic Iron Guard and the authoritarian tendencies of King Carol II. The king promulgated a new constitution and dissolved the political parties in 1938, replacing the parliamentary system with a royal dictatorship. The 1938 Munich Agreement convinced King Carol II that France and the United Kingdom could not defend Romanian interests. German preparations for a new war required the regular supply of Romanian oil and agricultural products. The two countries concluded a treaty concerning the coordination of their economic policies in 1939, but the king could not persuade Adolf Hitler to guarantee Romania's frontiers. Romania was forced to cede Bessarabia and northern Bukovina to the Soviet Union on June 26, 1940, northern Transylvania to Hungary on August 30, and southern Dobruja to Bulgaria in September. After the territorial losses, the king was forced to abdicate in favor of his minor son, Michael I, on September 6, and Romania was transformed into a national legionary state under the leadership of General Ion Antonescu. Antonescu signed the Tripartite Pact of Germany, Italy, and Japan on November 23. The Iron Guard staged a coup against Antonescu, but he crushed the riot with German support and introduced a military dictatorship in early 1941. Romania entered World War II soon after the German invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941. The country regained Bessarabia and northern Bukovina, and the Germans placed Transnistria under Romanian administration. Romanian and German troops massacred at least 160,000 local Jews in these territories, more than 105,000 Jews and about 11,000 Gypsies died during their deportation from Bessarabia to Transnistria. Most of the Jewish population of Moldavia, Wallachia, Banat, and southern Transylvania survived, but their fundamental rights were limited. After the September 1943 Allied armistice with Italy, Romania became the second Axis power in Europe in 1943 to 1944. After the German occupation of Hungary in March 1944, about 132,000 Jews, mainly Hungarian-speaking, were deported to extermination camps from northern Transylvania with the Hungarian authorities' support. After the Soviet victory in the Battle of Stalingrad in 1943, Iuliu Maniu, a leader of the opposition to Antonescu, entered into secret negotiations with British diplomats who made it clear that Romania had to seek reconciliation with the Soviet Union. To facilitate the coordination of their activities against Antonescu's regime, the National Liberal and National Peasants parties established the National Democratic Bloc, which also included the Social Democratic and Communist parties. After a successful Soviet offensive, the young King Michael I ordered Antonescu's arrest and appointed politicians from the National Democratic Bloc to form a new government on August 23, 1944. Romania switched sides during the war, and nearly 250,000 Romanian troops joined the Red Army's military campaign against Hungary and Germany, but Joseph Stalin regarded the country as an occupied territory within the Soviet sphere of influence. Stalin's deputy instructed the king to make the communists' candidate, Petru Griza, the prime minister in March 1945. The Romanian administration in northern Transylvania was soon restored, and Griza's government carried out an agrarian reform. In February 1947, the Paris peace treaties confirmed the return of northern Transylvania to Romania, but they also legalized the presence of units of the Red Army in the country. Communism. During the Soviet occupation of Romania, the communist-dominated government called for new elections in 1946, which they fraudulently won, with a fabricated 70% majority of the vote. Thus, they rapidly established themselves as the dominant political force. George George, a Communist Party leader imprisoned in 1933, escaped in 1944 to become Romania's first communist leader. In February 1947, he and others forced King Michael I to abdicate and leave the country and proclaimed Romania a People's Republic. Romania remained under the direct military occupation and economic control of the USSR until the late 1950s. During this period, Romania's vast natural resources were drained continuously by mixed Soviet-Romanian companies set up for unilateral exploitative purposes. In 1948, the state began to nationalize private firms and to collectivize agriculture. Until the early 1960s, the government severely curtailed political liberties and vigorously suppressed any dissent with the help of the Securitate, the Romanian secret police. During this period the regime launched several campaigns of purges during which numerous enemies of the state and parasite elements were targeted for different forms of punishment, including deportation, internal exile, internment in forced labor camps and prisons, sometimes for life, as well as extrajudicial killing. Nevertheless, anti-communist resistance was one of the most long-lasting and strongest in the Eastern Bloc. A 2006 commission estimated the number of direct victims of the communist repression at 2 million people. In 1965, Nicolae Ceausescu came to power and started to conduct the country's foreign policy more independently from the Soviet Union. Thus, Communist Romania was the only Warsaw Pact country which refused to participate in the Soviet-led 1968 invasion of Czechoslovakia. Ceausescu even publicly condemned the action as a big mistake, and a serious danger to peace in Europe and to the fate of communism in the world. It was the only communist state to maintain diplomatic relations with Israel after 1967's Six-Day War and established diplomatic relations with West Germany the same year. At the same time, close ties with the Arab countries and the Palestine Liberation Organization allowed Romania to play a key role in the Israel, Egypt and Israel, PLO peace talks. As Romania's foreign debt increased sharply between 1977 and 1981, the influence of international financial organizations such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank grew, gradually conflicting with Ceausescu's autocratic rule. He eventually initiated a policy of total reimbursement of the foreign debt by imposing austerity steps that impoverished the population and exhausted the economy. The process succeeded in repaying all of Romania's foreign government debt in 1989. At the same time, Ceausescu greatly extended the authority of the Securitate secret police and imposed a severe cult of personality, which led to a dramatic decrease in the dictator's popularity and culminated in his overthrow in the violent Romanian Revolution of December 1989, in which thousands were killed or injured. After a trial, Ceausescu and his wife were executed by firing squad at a military base outside Bucharest on December 25, 1989. The charges for which they were executed were, among others, genocide by starvation. Contemporary period. After the 1989 revolution, the National Salvation Front, led by Ion Iliescu, took partial and superficial multi-party democratic and free market measures after seizing power as an ad interim governing body. In March 1990, violent outbreaks went on in Târgu as a result of Hungarian oppression in the region. In April 1990, a sit-in protest contesting the results of that year's legislative elections and accusing the FSN, including Iliescu, of being made up of former communists and members of the Securitate grew rapidly to become what was called the Golaniad. Peaceful demonstrations degenerated into violence, prompting the intervention of coal miners summoned by Iliescu. This episode has been documented widely by both local and foreign media, and is remembered as the June 1990 mine riot. The subsequent disintegration of the front produced several political parties, including most notably the Social Democratic Party and the Democratic Party. The former governed Romania from 1990 until 1996 through several coalitions and governments, with Ion Iliescu as head of state. Since then, there have been several other democratic changes of government. In 1996 Emil Constantinescu was elected president. In 2000 Iliescu returned to power, while Traian Băsescu was elected in 2004 and narrowly re-elected in 2009. In 2009, the country was bailed out by the International Monetary Fund as an aftershock of the Great Recession in Europe. In November 2014, Cebu former FDR Mayor Klaus Iohannis was elected president, unexpectedly defeating former Prime Minister Victor Ponta, who had been previously leading in the opinion polls. This surprise victory was attributed by many analysts to the implication of the Romanian diaspora in the voting process, with almost 50% casting their votes for Klaus Iohannis in the first round, compared to only 16% for Ponta. In 2019, Iohannis was re-elected president in a landslide victory over former Prime Minister Viorica Dancila. The post-1989 period is characterized by the fact that most of the former industrial and economic enterprises which were built and operated during the communist period were closed, mainly as a result of the policies of privatization of the post-1989 regimes. Corruption has been a major issue in contemporary Romanian politics. In November 2015, massive anti-corruption protests which developed in the wake of the collective nightclub fire led to the resignation of Romania's Prime Minister Victor Ponta. During 2017 to 2018, in response to measures which were perceived to weaken the fight against corruption, some of the biggest protests since 1989 took place in Romania, with over 500,000 people protesting across the country. Nevertheless, there have been significant reforms aimed at tackling corruption. A national anti-corruption directorate was formed in the country in 2002, inspired by similar institutions in Belgium, Norway, and Spain. Since 2014, Romania launched an anti-corruption effort that led to the prosecution of medium and high-level political, judicial, and administrative offenses by the National Anti-Corruption Directorate. NATO and EU integration. After the end of the Cold War, Romania developed closer ties with Western Europe and the United States, eventually joining NATO in 2004, and hosting the 2008 summit in Bucharest. The country applied in June 1993 for membership in the European Union and became an associated state of the EU in 1995, an acceding country in 2004, and a full member on January 1, 2007. During the 2000s, Romania had one of the highest economic growth rates in Europe and has been referred at times as the Tiger of Eastern Europe. This has been accompanied by a significant improvement in living standards as the country successfully reduced domestic poverty and established a functional democratic state. However, Romania's development suffered a major setback during the late 2000s recession, leading to a large gross domestic product contraction and a budget deficit in 2009. This led to Romania borrowing from the International Monetary Fund. Worsening economic conditions led to unrest and triggered a political crisis in 2012. Near the end of 2013, The Economist reported Romania again enjoying booming economic growth at 4.1% that year, with wages rising fast and a lower unemployment than in Britain. Economic growth accelerated in the midst of government liberalization in opening up new sectors to competition and investment, most notably, energy and telecoms. In 2016, the Human Development Index ranked Romania as a nation of very high human development. Following the experience of economic instability throughout the 1990s, and the implementation of a free travel agreement with the EU, a great number of Romanians emigrated to Western Europe and North America, with particularly large communities in Italy, Germany, and Spain. In 2016, the Romanian diaspora was estimated to be over 3.6 million people, the fifth highest emigrant population in the world. Politics. The Constitution of Romania is based on the Constitution of France's Fifth Republic and was approved in a national referendum on December 8, 1991 and amended in October 2003 to bring it into conformity with EU legislation. The Economist Intelligence Unit rated Romania as a flawed democracy in 2023. Freedom House also considers Romania to be free. The country is governed on the basis of a multi-party democratic system and the separation of powers between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. It is a semi-presidential republic where executive functions are held by both the government and the president. The latter is elected by popular vote for a maximum of 2 terms of 5 years and appoints the Prime Minister, who in turn appoints the Council of Ministers. The legislative branch of the government, collectively known as the Parliament, consists of 2 chambers whose members are elected every 4 years by simple plurality. The justice system is independent of the other branches of government and is made up of a hierarchical system of courts, with the High Court of Cassation and Justice being the Supreme Court of Romania. There are also courts of appeal, county courts and local courts. The Romanian judicial system is strongly influenced by the French model, is based on civil law and is inquisitorial in nature. The Constitutional Court is responsible for judging the compliance of laws and other state regulations with the Constitution, which is the fundamental law of the country and can be amended only through a public referendum. Romania's 2007 entry into the EU has been a significant influence on its domestic policy, and including judicial reforms, increased judicial cooperation with other member states, and measures to combat corruption. Foreign relations. Since December 1989, Romania has pursued a policy of strengthening relations with the West in general, more specifically with the United States and the European Union, albeit with limited relations involving the Russian Federation. It joined NATO on March 29, 2004, the European Union on January 1, 2007, while it joined the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank in 1972, and is a founding member of the World Trade Organization. In the past, recent governments have stated that one of their goals is to strengthen ties with and helping other countries with the process of integration with the rest of the West. Romania has also made clear since the late 1990s that it supports NATO and EU membership for the democratic former Soviet republics in Eastern Europe and the Caucasus. Romania also declared its public support for Turkey, and Croatia joining the European Union. Romania opted on January 1, 2007, to accede to the Schengen area, and its bid to join was approved by the European Parliament in June 2011, but was rejected by the EU Council in September 2011. As of August 2019, its acceptance into the Schengen area is hampered because the European Council has misgivings about Romania's adherence to the rule of law, a fundamental principle of EU membership. In December 2005, President Traian Băsescu and United States Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice signed an agreement that would allow a U.S. military presence at several Romanian facilities primarily in the eastern part of the country. In May 2009, Hillary Clinton, U.S. Secretary of State, declared that Romania is one of the most trustworthy and respectable partners of the USA. Relations with Moldova are a special case given that the two countries share the same language and a common history. A movement for unification of Moldova and Romania appeared in the early 1990s after both countries achieved emancipation from communist rule but lost ground in the mid-1990s when a new Moldovan government pursued an agenda towards preserving a Moldovan republic independent of Romania. After the 2009 protests in Moldova and the subsequent removal of communists from power, relations between the two countries have improved considerably. Economy. In 2024, Romania has a GDP of around 817 billion and a GDP per capita of 43,179. According to the World Bank, Romania is a high-income economy. According to Eurostat, Romania's GDP per capita was 77% of the EU average in 2022, an increase from 44% in 2007, making Romania one of the fastest growing economies in the EU. After 1989, the country experienced a decade of economic instability and decline, led in part by an obsolete industrial base and a lack of structural reform. From 2000 onward, however, the Romanian economy was transformed into one of relative macroeconomic stability, characterized by high growth, low unemployment, and declining inflation. In 2006, according to the Romanian Statistics Office, GDP growth in real terms was recorded at 7.7%, one of the highest rates in Europe. However, the Great Recession forced the government to borrow externally, including an IMF €20 billion bailout program. According to the World Bank, GDP per capita in purchasing power parity grew from 13,687 in 2007 to 28,206 in 2018. Romania's average net monthly wage increased to €913 as of 2023, and an inflation rate of 1.1% in 2016. The largest local companies include car maker Automobile Dacia, Petrom, Rompetrol, Ford Romania, Electrica, Romgaz, RCS and RDS and Banca Transilvania. As of 2020, there are around 6,000 exports per month. Romania's main exports are cars, software, clothing and textiles, industrial machinery, electrical and electronic equipment, metallurgic products, raw materials, military equipment, pharmaceuticals, fine chemicals, and agricultural products. Trade is mostly centered on the member states of the European Union, with Germany and Italy being the country's single largest trading partners. The account balance in 2012 was estimated to be 4.5% of GDP. After a series of privatizations and reforms in the late 1990s and 2000s, government intervention in the Romanian economy is somewhat less than in other European economies. In 2005, the government replaced Romania's progressive tax system with a flat tax of 16% for both personal income and corporate profit, among the lowest rates in the European Union. The economy is based predominantly on services, which account for 56% of the country's total GDP as of 2017, with industry and agriculture accounting for 30% and 4% respectively. Approximately 25% of the Romanian workforce is employed in agriculture, one of the highest rates in Europe. Romania has attracted increasing amounts of foreign investment following the end of communism, with the stock of foreign direct investment in Romania rising to €83.8 billion in June 2019. Romania's FDI outward stock amounted to €745 million in December 2018, the lowest value among the 28 EU member states. Some companies that have invested in Romania include Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Pizza Hut, Procter & Gamble, Citibank, and IBM. According to a 2019 World Bank report, Romania ranks 52nd out of 190 economies in the ease of doing business, one place higher than neighboring Hungary and one place lower than Italy. The report praised the consistent enforcement of contracts and access to credit in the country, while noting difficulties in access to electricity and dealing with construction permits. Since 1867 the official currency has been the Romanian leu and following a denomination in 2005. After joining the EU in 2007, Romania plans to adopt the euro in 2029. In January 2020, Romania's external debt was reported to be US $122 billion according to CEIC data. Languages. The official language is Romanian, a Romance language, which presents a consistent degree of similarity to a Romanian, Megleno-Romanian, and Istro-Romanian, but shares many features equally with the rest of the Western Romance languages, specifically Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Catalan. The Romanian alphabet contains the same 26 letters of the standard Latin alphabet, as well as 5 additional ones, totaling 31. Romanian is spoken as a first language by 91% of the entire population, while Hungarian and Vlax Romani are spoken by 6% and 1% of the population, respectively. There are also 40,861 native speakers of Ukrainian, 17,101 native speakers of Turkish, 15,943 native speakers of German, and 14,414 native speakers of Russian living in Romania. According to the Constitution, local councils ensure linguistic rights to all minorities. In localities with ethnic minorities of over 20%, that minority's language can be used in the public administration, justice system, and education. Foreign citizens and stateless persons who live in Romania have access to justice and education in their own language. English and French are the main foreign languages taught in schools. In 2010, the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie identified 4,756,100 French speakers in the country. According to the 2012 Eurobarometer, English is spoken by 31% of Romanians, French is spoken by 17%, and Italian and German, each by 7%. Religion. Romania is a secular state and has no state religion. An overwhelming majority of the population identify themselves as Christians. At the country's 2021 census, 73% of respondents identified as Orthodox Christians, with 73% belonging to the Romanian Orthodox Church. Other denominations include Protestantism, Roman Catholicism, and Greek Catholicism. From the remaining population, 128,291 people belong to other Christian denominations or have another religion, which includes 58,335 Muslims and 2,707 Jewish. Additionally, 71,417 people are irreligious, 57,205 are atheist, 25,485 are agnostic, and 2,895,539 people chose to not declare their religion. The Romanian Orthodox Church is an autocephalous Eastern Orthodox Church in full communion with other Orthodox churches, with a patriarch as its leader. It is the third largest Eastern Orthodox Church in the world, and unlike other Orthodox churches, it functions within a Latin culture and uses a Romance liturgical language. Its canonical jurisdiction covers the territories of Romania and Moldova. Romania has the world's third largest Eastern Orthodox population.